Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Matthew chapter 8, and we're going to see Jesus is going to be amazed by a Gentile's faith. And he's going to make the statement, I have not seen such great faith in Israel. Now, in the Gospels, there were two people that Jesus said great faith, and neither one of them were Israelites. And that's, of course, that's amazing because if anyone who should have great faith, it should be the Israelites. I mean, if you think about their history of God manifesting himself among them, why wouldn't they be? How in the world could they not have faith? And that's one of the things about Israel, is they have some of the greatest uh, unbelief. Their unbelief is unbelievable. Okay. All right. So let's get to it. Matthew chapter 8. Now, of course, we just finished the Sermon on the Mount, and I took my time with that because, as I said, one of the things that the Sermon on the Mount, besides some of the wisdom and insight and revelation, it also is the foundation that if you go and read through the epistle, you'll find a lot of what is taught is based on what Jesus taught with the Sermon on the Mount. And especially if you read the letters of Peter and James, it's almost, you could really tell right off. All right, so Matthew chapter 8, verse 1 says, when he came down from the mountains, large crowds followed him. Right away, a man with a serious skin disease came up and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Now, let me make one point here, just in case someone was paying attention. I read from the Holman Christian Standard Translation. It's just my translation of choice. I like reading from this translation. I leave all of the scholarly issues with the scholars. So I'm not in a position to kind of stand in that scholarly rank. And the reason why I say that is because he says in verse 2 right away, a man with a serious skin disease. Now, in especially the King James, and I've read the King James for decades, and so even now sometimes when I'm reading, it's almost instinctively some of the King James language tries to come out of me. But so when you see this, right away you can see the difference of the translations here when he says a serious skin disease, because in the other translations it will say leprosy. And of course, I was curious as to why the translators of the Holman Christian Standard use serious skin disease. Now, again, I'm not going to go too deep with that because, again, I'm not in a position as a scholar to kind of handle that. But I did read that their reasonings, they felt that the serious skin disease accurately more points out that what is being described here is more than just leprosy. Now, again, whether you agree with that or not, I'll let the scholars handle that debate. But throughout the Gospels, we will see that instead of leprosy, they will say serious skin disease. By the way, there's other what you may call the translation issues that people go back and forth on. To that, I will defer to the scholars. So he says, So right away, a man with a serious skin disease came up and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. It's kind of an interesting statement. Now, keep this in mind that the reason why he is approaching is not so much as to say or to ask, well, I wonder if Jesus can do it, because by now, and at the timeline, we are probably somewhere around the neighborhood of a year and a half into Jesus' 3.5 year ministry, maybe even closer to 2. In other words, remember, Matthew does not give us a chronological order, okay? But that he's just telling the story. So Jesus' reputation is fully known. So he knows he can do it. His question is, will Jesus do it? And so he says, verse 3, reaching out his hand, he touched him, saying, I am willing, be made clean. Immediately his disease was healed. Then Jesus told him, see that you don't tell anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer gifts that Moses prescribed as a testimony to them. Now, notice the reply, I am willing. I am willing. One of the things about faith, and we're going to see this in a moment, but understand, because I'm thinking of what I was taught as a Christian about faith. That I got saved under what is called the Word of Faith movement. And the church that I was a part of was one of the architects of this movement. Now, that I think that ministry was a great teacher, because as I grew and was able to say, let me really look at what they teach about faith versus what the scriptures actually teach about faith. And that's important because when you see, if you are taught that you have the power, well, that's kind of an easy fix, because you will quickly find out you don't. If they say, well, faith is a force, and then words are the container of the force that you release through speaking things into existence. That's kind of, a very short description of the teaching. It's more, but that's it. Now, what you see here is that they had faith in Jesus, however, that Jesus was the Messiah, that Jesus presented himself as the Messiah. So, when he says, I am willing, okay, that he didn't tell them, well, just use your own faith. Just use your own faith and heal yourself. Speak it into existence. In other words, their faith was centralized in Jesus. So, and then as you see, he reached out his hand and then healed him. He didn't send him away saying, just keep confessing. Just keep confessing. He sent him away, healed. But watch this. He said, see that you don't tell anyone, but go and show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses prescribed as a testimony to them. Kind of odd, isn't it? Because how can he not tell anyone? So whatever the skin disease he had, so let's say it is leprosy. And by the way, this translation doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't have leprosy. And like I said, I'll leave their explanation, the translators, I'll leave their explanation to them. But apparently everybody knew that he had it. Now, one of the things under the law was that leprosy was a big thing because, again, it wasn't curable. Now leprosy is curable. There are many chapters devoted to leprosy under the law, or skin disease, as they're calling it. And that, and again, like I said, I see where it's debatable, but hey, because this skin disease, whatever it is, to me is one that describes how contagious it is. The idea was that the skin disease or leprosy was so contagious that they would have to stay away from people. And then one of the duties of the priest was that they were to inspect a person to see whether or not if they were healed. This is why Jesus tells them, go show yourself to the priest and let him pronounce you healed. But when he says, see that you don't tell anyone, think about that. How could he not tell anyone? How could he say that I am not, what am I going to do, right? People are going to go, hey, what happened to your face, right? Now, sometimes, and there were a couple of reasons why Jesus was telling people not to tell them. One was that he might not have, at the time, want crowds drawn to him. And you'll see that in some cases, he couldn't help it. Verse 5 says, and when he entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, pleading with him, Lord, my servant is lying at home, paralyzed, in terrible agony. Verse 7, I will come and heal him, he told him. So right away, Jesus said, okay, I'll come and heal him. Now, by the way, this centurion was a Gentile, right? He wasn't a Jew, he was a Gentile. He was outside of the Israel covenant. Verse 8, Lord, the centurion replied, I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be cured. For I, too, am a man under authority, having soldiers under my command. I say to this one, go, and he goes, and another one, come, and he comes. And to my slave, do this, and he does it. So notice this, he said, you don't even have to come. Just speak the word. Just speak the word, Jesus. Hearing this, Jesus was amazed and said to those following him, I assure you, I have not found anyone in Israel with so great a faith. And I tell you that many will come from the east and the west and recline at the tables with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be thrown out into outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And then Jesus told the centurion, go as you have believed, let it be done for you. And the servant was cured that very hour. Now, this is an amazing story because notice he said, I have not found this kind of great faith in Israel. And that's both a compliment to the Gentile, but an insult to Israel. That if anybody, y'all should have this great faith right here. So then he said, I tell you that many will come from the east and the west and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, but the sons of the kingdom will be thrown out into utter darkness. Now, he goes a little deeper here because this kind of speaks to their faith in him as the Messiah. And then he says there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay? So this is a great story right here. We're going to see another story where, again, another Gentile will have such great faith that Jesus will compliment them on their great faith. So understand this too, that the reason why they should have great faith in Jesus is because Jesus has done everything that he has presented himself for them to have faith in him as the Messiah. And again, many of them are not believing. Okay, verse 14. When Jesus went into Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying in the bed. Saw his mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. So he touched his hand, and the fever left her. She got up and began to serve him. So, again, another, I don't know how many Catholics out there, or if you came out of Catholicism, but as you know, one of the teachings, and in a lot of cases, Catholics just don't teach the Bible. They rely on their traditions, which contradict the Bible in many cases. And one of them, besides to say the apostolic succession, but one of the things that a lot of them believe that the apostles weren't married. And here we see that Peter was married, which makes it interesting because if Peter is the head of the church, and then you have, the celibacy. And by the way, that whole celibacy thing, one of the popes just kind of woke up one day and said, you know what? You know, all my guys, y'all no longer get married. It's not scripture. There's not a single scripture to support celibacy. God, by the way, has never ever told anyone not to get married. Never. He's never told anyone to get married. Um, I'm trying to think if there's one. Okay. But no, I think he has not told anyone. Celibacy was always kind of a choice. Now, Jesus was celibate, but you don't have any, his purpose here was never to come and, kind of be a normal person. But notice Peter was married. Why? Because his mother-in-law was lying in the bed sick. And when Jesus healed her, she got up and began to serve him. Now, verse 16, and when the evening came, they brought to him many who were demon-possessed. He drove out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. Now, I'm gonna come back and talk about demon possession with another story later on. Okay, but keep in mind that he drove out spirits, or he said he and those that were demon possessed. I will deal with that because there is a difference. Let's say in schizophrenia, mental illness, severe mental illness. And sometimes people would think that that is kind of what is being described here. I'm going to show you that it is not. But notice this, that Jesus cast out, notice, he didn't cast out conditions, he cast out demons. And then he said, and he spoke, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. So, so that, verse 17, so that it was spoken through the prophet Isaiah, that it might be fulfilled, that he himself took our weaknesses and carried our disease. This Jesus healing ministry is a fulfillment of Isaiah 53. Okay, that Jesus, this is, you can say, this fulfilled. This again, one of the things that demonstrated him as um, um, it demonstrated Jesus as the Son of God, as the Messiah. Okay. Let me show you that. And then I'm gonna let me show you that. Matthew, Isaiah. I think I'm on 53. I'm going to show you what Isaiah 53 says, and then also Peter. Isaiah. Okay, so this is a prophetic picture of the Messiah. Look at verse 1. I'm going to start with verse 1. It says, Who has believed what we have heard? Who has the arm of the Lord been revealed to? Now, we're actually, you could say that the fulfillment of this is as we're reading the gospel. He said he grew up before him like a young plant and like a root out of dry ground. He didn't have any impressive form or majesty that we should look at him, and no appearance that we should desire him. Now, some people humorously always want to look at this and say that Jesus was an ugly person. That's not what this is saying. But when Jesus walked the earth, he walked the earth as a common man. In other words, you could probably say he didn't have Hollywood looks. He didn't look like, some famous Hollywood. In other words, he was unimpressive. It was an ordinary man. He said he was despised and rejected by men, a man of suffering who knew what sickness was. He was like someone people turned away from. He was despised and we didn't value him. Yet He himself bore our sicknesses and carried our pains, but we in turn regarded him stricken down by God and afflicted. So again, notice here, this is the very verse that we're reading. He himself bore our sickness and carried our pains. So, and I think too that this is not only a physical revelation, but it also goes into the spiritual, because that's exactly what he did spiritually. Verse 5 says, "But he was pierced because of our transgressions, crushed because of our iniquities. The punishment of our peace was upon him, and we are healed by his wounds. We all went astray like sheep, and we have turned to our own way, and the Lord has punished him for the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb to the slaughter, and like a sheep silent before his shearers, he didn't open his mouth. He was taken away because of the oppression of the judgment, and who has considered his faith? He was cut off of the land of the living. He was struck because of my people's rebellion. They made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, although he had done no violence. Yet he had not spoken deceitfully. Yet the Lord was pleased to crush him severely. And when you make him a restitution offering, he will see his seed and prolong his days. By the hand of the Lord's pleasure will be accomplished. He will see it. He will see it out of the anguish, and he will be satisfied with his knowledge. And my righteous servant will justify many, and he will carry their iniquities. Now I'm going to stop right there. I wanted to go on and read that because this is whom, as we're reading in Matthew, this is whom he saw. This is the suffering servant. Okay, but look at this. So he carried their diseases. That's why you see this everywhere he went. He was healing people, restoring them, thus proving and demonstrating that he is the Messiah. Right out of their scriptures, by the way, that as we saw, that he was prophesied to be the Messiah. All right, guys, we'll pick it up in the next study. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome, and I'll see you in the next study.